Today we're going to talk about an 80s movie that, I had a lot of accessibility to a lot of horror movies of the 80s. This one was severely taken, we don't want you to watch this movie. And it's kind of weird. Well, you have all these monsters in horror movies, but this one, why don't you hold off, Nick? I don't think you're ready for this kind of movie.
Yeah, we basically took Breakfast Club and we gave them antidepressants, and we're helping kind of like put them through the darkest period of your life.
Interesting reference of John Hughes, and I want to talk about in my thesis. But let's talk about Neil Jimenez's kind of his real kind of what's regarded as his masterpiece screenwriting, River's Edge.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast Reviews and the St. Paul Filmcast Show. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals, great opportunities. And, of course, if you pick a movie to tell us to review, of course, a show to you as well. Today we're going to talk about The River's Edge. I think it's time to talk about it. And you said you've said it before, but I don't know if our audiences even know that it exists. It's a Keanu movies that, people talk about Keanu Reeves movies, and they don't mention this one.
Well, because it goes through heavy periods of out-of-printness, which makes it severely difficult to find. But it is now in print. MGM released a bare-bones Blu-ray that looks pretty great. When Matt and his friends become aware that one of them, Samson, murdered another, Jamie, it sets them each on a personal journey of reflection and a choice. Protect Samson's crime or turn him in.
John kills his girlfriend in the river in the beginning of the movie. Then you have Tim, who's throwing his younger sister's favorite doll into the river as kind of just to get back at her. He's mad at her. Great kind of catalyst of what we're seeing to begin the movie. Both kind of, he sees what his friend did. He doesn't really tell anybody, but he understands a window opportunity to make friends.
Yeah. And Tim, played by Joshua Miller, who actually directed The Exorcism, the movie we talked about last year with Russell Crowe. That young kid was the one who replaced Corey Haim in this film.
Yeah, initially it was going to be Corey Haim, but I think this is actually a better fit.
I think he's a bit younger than Corey Haim was at this period,
right,
I think it was definitely kind of a more fitting a character that we have a blank slate on because we don't know him from a lot of films. I know he was in Near Dark, he was in Halloween 3, but like we don't really have that cling to Joshua Miller. But you're right. The lens through which Josh looks at, Daniel Roebuck's character is so important because it's also the lens in which Keanu Reeves' character, Matt, looks through that lens and how they're different.
Right. Yes. I read a lot of people's reviews, and I think the right assessment is here Neil Jimenez is screaming in minor notes, which I understand. It's not a loud, bombastic, look at the horror that people do, and why aren't they calling the police and doing everything? And it's the outrage, but in minor keys. Does that kind of explain to you?
Well, I think as a screenwriter, he understands that this is an absurd situation based on real events. And I think he knows I don't need to play this up. He does in a couple places that I really wish he wouldn't have, primarily with the character of Feck. But with the actual
with John and Fleck meet together,
and just the
imaginary
the love doll and thing, I don't know that's needed at all in the film. When he plays it just straight and lets you as an audience member be disturbed, be confused, be shocked, and have all of your emotions run through, you find yourself on a very similar journey to one of these characters, and you just have to figure out which one.
So right, it's an interesting, and you're absolutely right. This is a great punch to a lot of the John Hughes movies that we get. We get a lot of high school drama.
Yeah.
But here we get a very dark tone. This is very much teenagers, but the kids aren't out right.
Yeah.
Which you understand, no matter what the trauma is in a John Hughes kind of movie like Breakfast Club or 16 Candles, eventually those kids are going to turn out okay. It's a little
Things
bit
will change.
Things will change. But this feels like it's never going to be okay afterwards.
Yeah.
And I understand Crispin Glover is trying to be the referee, like, let's just root for a friend, right? Let's just help our friend out. Let's just hide the body.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and it's a certain response that, again, not condoning it, can understand it. We're not in that situation. We don't know what we would do. This movie, as almost like a litmus test for like that memory you have of the first time you realize that young people can die. When I was in high school, there was someone I knew who was a high schooler who passed away. And it was this realization that, like, I'm not as safe as I thought I was.
Right, you're not invisible.
And these characters are all in a situation where one day their friend Jamie's alive, next day she's dead. Regardless of what even happened between the two of them, one day their friend is alive and one is dead, and now they have this internalized question of how do we proceed. And it's really not fun, but it's interesting to see how all those characters splinter.
Yes.
Yeah, into every possible outcome.
But every encounter kind of leaves, and I always talk about like a stain to that character, even though they know about Dennis Hopper. This is a movie he made right after Blue Velvet.
Yep.
It almost seems like he's doing the same kind of guy. Like, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have seen the Lynchian elements to the film.
Yeah.
And I can see that too because, again, it's a small town, simple story, but there's an undercurrent of
Bad.
horror, yeah.
Undercurrent of bad. But the kids aren't all right. And you have a lot of kids who, in the 80s, kind of felt isolated, kind of disassociated, kind of alone, kind of just were unsupervised. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, even Keanu Reeves, even though he has a family, that family dynamic, my God, I understand why you don't want to be home.
Yeah. And he's got two parents. Well, he's got a mother and he's got a stepdad, and both of them are just not interested in him as a person. They're dealing with their own stuff at his own loss. And if he's being failed by his parents as a 16, 17-year-old, you got to imagine what the failure is for the younger kids. Because every parent is going to be much more concerned about their younger kids, and if they can't get it correct with him, the other two are going to suffer even worse. And I think it's interesting that he's kind of the character in which has to go on, I think, the largest personal journey in the film, because he makes his choice, and then he has to live with those repercussions and hide those repercussions. Right. And especially his interactions with Ione Skye, who's dealing with her own stuff. She might be sleeping with the teacher. We don't know. Every character in this film is going through a really bad time.
And she's doing it, probably she's not really proud of it, but she's so alone.
Yeah.
And you feel that, everybody, kind of that spacing of alone. As a kid, you'd see a lot of horror movies and you see like Nightmare on Elm Street and all that stuff. But this, when I first saw it as a kid, a dead body, I think that was perfectly filmed. I don't know if it's probably really her.
It was an actual actress.
Yeah.
Who was 19, and she basically just had to have breathing exercises and be covered in makeup. And she kind of said that she regretted the role because basically her role was being naked and dead in front of her family who watched the film.
But that is such a punch. When I'm used to seeing blood and everything, but to see it just there, almost like on display, and not really give a crap.
Yeah.
It's far more devastating than any kind of.
Well, because of how close up you are, it would be really hard. You can make a dead body like a prop and make it work, but it's really hard to make it look that real. And I think it might have been a good call to have an actress play the part.
And that's a real good sell for the whole movie, because if it looks hokey, you're not going to buy into all the other performances around. But you show that body in this, like, even that stance, like, wow, there it is. And it's not like Alfred Hitchcock movie of the dead body.
Yeah.
It's not played about, but it's just starts there, and they leave it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lingering is, I think, what does it for me. It's because at that point, as a filmmaker, Tim Hunter is forcing you to be one of the characters in Stand By Me. He's forcing you to be like, you know the plot of this movie, you're going into it, and you get there, and it's something you don't want to see. And I think that's where the strength of the film really lies, is that now you're an absent viewer. You're part of it now.
Right.
And I think that's why when it poses the question and it splinters all these characters off, you cling to the one that works with you the most. And I think a lot of them would be Keanu Reeves' character.
If I did a film class, it definitely would be required film viewing. And I just think it's because we see a lot of it's a different counterbalance to a lot of the 80s movies we saw. It's not really a horror movie, but it is kind of a horror movie.
Yeah,
it's a teenage drama, but
but
it's very weight. You feel the weight of it, the entire process.
Mm-hmm.
And you fear the gloom of it. It's never going to be a recovery. They're never really going to recover from it.
Yeah. So. It's a movie that I think gets the kids mostly right. And I think that's where it needs to get that right. Because I don't think Dennis Hopper's character works. I don't think it's a case where he's just in a different movie, and I don't think he's adding as much. For all these adults being out of the picture, I don't think having him in the movie works as well. I think the mother character of Keanu Reeves is playing a little melodrama.
There wasn't really a casting audition place. They just called people up who wanted to be in the movie. Right.
And part of it is that Tim Hunter said, I can do the movie for $1 million because no studio wanted to make it for $5 million, which is what they were estimating the film to be. So we had to kind of make some corners and adjustments and stuff. Yeah. And the one big thing is, again, I know a lot of people that really liked Crispin Glover's performance. I don't like Crispin Glover's performance in the movie because it does feel to me like he is playing Crispin Glover playing a character.
A little overhanded.
Yeah, and I think Lane is an interesting character. I know Crispin had been going for the Daniel Roebuck character, going for John. I think that would have been interesting. I think I like Roebuck in the role more because
do.
I think Roebuck is definitely an understated performer.
There's some deep, you can see from this character, there's some deep problems there.
Yeah.
That don't get fleshed out.
But I think Crispin Glover he's always kind of played Crispin Glover, and I think he is in this movie. And so he's kind of the one note that I feel like was the lead character in the writing, and then they realized, no, Keanu Reeves is the star, and the movie shifts towards him.
Okay.
And I think it was a smart shift.
Right. So hopefully you've seen River's Edge. I think it's accessible on any kind of streaming service. And keep the conversation going. Put a comment down below. Hit the like. Talk to friends about it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't seen the film, now would be the time to check it out at the very least. Because of the rights issues with the music, it does tend to disappear occasionally. Although MGM did release a Blu-ray of the movie where it looks gorgeous. But it is bare bones. So at least if you want the film, that's the way to get it, because every other version is out of print.
The whole movie feels bare bones. It doesn't feel like it's dressing up.
Yeah,
anything, right?
But it's funny that it's just stuff on the radio. Why you can't see the movie anymore is because the damn radio rights. Damn. But thank you for joining us for another episode of Kyle and Nick on Film.
Yes.
Head on over to GoFilmReviews.com, and I've got reviews of the, I believe it was 16, 19 something movies I saw at Minneapolis St. Paul International Film Festival. I got reviews going up over there. Check it out.
Yeah. One of them was like Checkpoint Soup. Yep. Thanks for watching.